If you have to say you're powerful, maybe you're not. Some people speak to impress, others walk in silence, and the world listens anyway. But think about it. Why do we feel the need to explain ourselves so often, to defend, to justify, to fill the room with words, just so we're not misunderstood? Maybe we're speaking not to express, but to be accepted. And that's the illusion. The illusion of loudness. We live in a world that rewards noise, where being seen is mistaken for being strong, where the loudest person often gets the most attention, but rarely the most respect. We've been trained to believe, if you're quiet, you're weak. If you're still, you're irrelevant. If you don't post it, it didn't happen. But that's backwards. A lion doesn't roar when it hunts. It moves in silence. The most dangerous man in the room? Often the quietest, because power that needs to be announced isn't power, it's performance. Stoic insight, the strength of restraint. Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." The Stoics believed restraint wasn't weakness, it was mastery. When you don't rush to react, when you listen more than you speak, you gain control of the moment, of yourself, of the outcome. It's easy to speak when emotions rise, but it takes real strength to stay still, to let silence do the work. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of intention. And when you do speak, your words carry weight, not because you spoke more, but because you spoke less. Story: the man who spoke with silence. I once met a man during a leadership training, former special forces, quiet, unassuming. He sat in the back of the room, said almost nothing. But when he stood up to speak, every head turned, every conversation stopped. Why? Because his silence wasn't emptiness, it was presence. He didn't carry ego, he carried experience. And when he spoke, it wasn't to prove, it was to guide. His strength didn't come from charisma, it came from clarity. He had nothing to prove, because he knew who he was. Transformation, why silence is real power. You don't need to shout when your results speak. You don't need to argue when your peace is louder than their chaos. You don't need to explain your worth when you're living it every single day. Real power is quiet. It's subtle. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't fear being overlooked because it knows it can't be ignored. Ask yourself, do you speak to connect, or do you speak to be seen? There's a difference, and that difference defines your power. Metaphor: the swordsmith's discipline. Think of the swordsmith. He doesn't yell while shaping the blade. He works in silence, precision, patience, hours in the heat. No applause, no audience, just purpose. And when the time comes, that blade doesn't need to speak. It cuts. So does your presence when forged in silence. Wake-up call. Choose stillness over sound. Next time you're about to speak, pause. Ask yourself, is this noise or necessity? You don't have to weigh in on every opinion. You don't have to correct every misunderstanding. You don't have to raise your voice to raise your standard. Every time you choose silence, you choose control. And in that stillness, you become undeniable. You don't need to speak louder. You just need to stand stronger. Let your silence say what words never could. Prove nothing, but mean everything. So the next time they look at you for a reaction, give them your calm. Give them your clarity. Give them your stillness. Subscribe, not for more noise, but for more clarity. This is your space for stillness, strength, and self-mastery. And the best part? You don't have to shout to be powerful. You just have to walk with quiet conviction.